Welcome, everyone. We are here in another Wolang Wednesday, and it looks like everything is working. And today we are doing something a little bit different than what we usually do. Today is a Q&A, and I'm really excited to answer the questions that you submitted previously to this live. We're going to be talking all things that have to do with what is it like to start with your first week in the classroom with comprehensible input and proficiency style methods? So let's get started. Now, if you didn't get a chance to pre-submit a Q, no worries. I still got an A for you. Put it in the comments below as we're talking so that I can get to it. But I have a few that I'm going to make sure that I get to first. So let's jump right into it. Okay. But actually, tell me, where are you watching from? And what day do you start school? Because I would love to know. I would absolutely love to know. But I got the questions up here, so I'm going to go ahead and start with them. And oh, how rude of me. I should introduce myself. If you are new to these parts, my name is Devin, and I am the teacher behind La Libre Language Learning for French teachers, or La Libre Language Learning for Spanish teachers. But all world language teachers are welcome here today. We are talking all things how to really get rolling with proficiency and comprehensible input in your first week of school. And I have a few questions that I asked my newsletter list of what is really hard about the first week of starting with comprehensible input, because that's where a lot of people really seem to hit that brick wall of like, oh, I have so many ideas, but I just don't know where to start. So let's go with the first question here. First question that I've got for you here is, I asked, what's hard about starting with CI in the first week of school? And someone asked, classroom management. So put a nice raised hand in the comments below if that is true for you too. And I'm checking in here to see if we got some comments in here too. Hello, y'all. Thank you for coming and watching with me. I'm excited that you're here. I am excited that you're here. So also, if you vibe with any of these questions, let me know if this applies to you too, because I'm sure that they are not alone in asking this question. So if you ever felt that way, if you're trying to start with proficiency and you're like, classroom management, I know I have to adjust my strategy a little bit. What is that going to look like for me? The teacher who asked this question, you are not alone. So what are my best classroom management tips? I've got some for you. The first thing that I want you to remember is that classroom management is so stylistic. There is no one size fits all thing. It really has to do with your personality because of an important thing that is the fundamental reason of why you're already a good teacher, and you need to maximize on that. And that is your love of creating relationships and your ability to build relationships. And the way that everybody relates to other humans is different. So the way that the person across the hall from you manages their class is going to look different from the way that you do. So if you're sitting around thinking like, how am I going to manage my class this year, especially if you have new challenges or you're trying to start with CI, it is definitely going to look different, and it should be personalized and tailored to you. One of the number one mistakes that people often make is they try to be somebody else, or they try to be a persona, like a teaching persona. You've got like the warm, sweet, mothering persona, which is one, or you've got maybe if you are afraid that you're going to let too many things slide. If you're a little bit of a pushover normally, you might be the overly stern persona, which is also a side of the mothering game. Like those of you who are stern mothers, like raise your hand. I'm a very stern mother. So I'm right there with you. But this is something that I want you to remember that will also develop as you roll on. And something that is specific to proficiency is that you absolutely can still do this in the target language, because the same 5 things that you might need in order to redirect your class and to manage your classroom, you can do those in the target language. That is absolutely possible. And the same environment or atmosphere that you're trying to create is doable, much more so with body language than having to speak a lot or say a lot of words. And I would also say that the times when you do reserve for English, it becomes really powerful if it is in those moments where there needs to be some real redirection. But that will come later on in the year. So I wouldn't worry too much about, like, one of the things that happens really often is If you're trying to move towards more target language, I know I worried about this, and you're thinking to yourself, I'm not going to have all of the things that I usually have in my behavior arsenal in order to effectively build relationships and manage my classroom. Herein lies the rub, though. The actual fabric of your class is pretty tenuous if your students aren't learning or retaining material. And if you are working in an environment where you're trying to move towards more proficiency, you are building a stronger fabric and a stronger foundation and relationship just by making your class worth it, relevant, rigorous. You're already adding like a huge level of respect in that area. Like when I started using more target language in class, my relationships with students improved, and therefore your classroom management will improve. So those are some big ideas that I want you to take with you. But of course, like those aren't really helpful unless you have some examples. So I've got some examples for you. Let's take a look at some of these. Well, I'm going to take a look at some of these, and I'm going to tell you these because I came with notes. So the first thing that I want you to keep in mind too, when it comes to classroom management, just in general, is to ditch the idea that there is some sort of power dichotomy going on in your classroom. The classroom is, of course, a political space, and there are, of course, positions of power. Nobody will deny that. Check out the class that I do on decolonizing the classroom, where we go into more depth about that. And management is, of course, part of the ways that that will play out. But what we're talking about today is the idea of the pyramid. In this pyramid, this is the best thing I ever learned in my classroom management course. 85% of students come to school wanting to be successful, wanting to be on your side, and not trying to get into any sticky stuff. They're not trying to mess with you. It doesn't mean that they're like, yeah, freaking yeah, school. It just means that, they're happy to go with what they need to do and to like go with the flow. And you'll see that kind of if you just like go to your everyday average store too, right? Like that's usually how people behave. 85 to 90% of peeps, they want to stay in the lines. And rules and management are really there for 10% and 15% of people who might need a little bit of redirection for lots of different reasons. There's also going to be 5%, maybe 3%, like whatever your classroom looks like, that are going to need far more than just casual reminders. But think about that when it comes to the amount of people in your classroom. Like that's a lot less energy that you have to give to each student when it comes to just the area of management, right? It's one of those huge stressors that we have, and it is indeed really challenging. Nobody will deny that. But when it comes to classroom management and upping up your target language, focus your attention on the 15% that need you the most, because the other 85% are real happy to go with the flow most of the time. That's like a real general breakdown of what most classrooms look like. And I would say that that's definitely been true for me. Sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little bit lower, but that has definitely been true for me. And I think that that's a really good general idea to go on for the idea that like you're not walking into a room of people who are not on your side. It's not like that at all. Kids want you to be in charge, and they want you to take charge of the classroom. And rules and management are also, please enforce them, because they are something that don't just exist for the 15% of students who need them and need reminders of them. It's also for the other 85% of people who get really uncomfortable and cannot learn if they're not in a controlled environment. So let me tell you a little bit more about that. What I mean by that is there are 5 things that are the foundations. Like we're not going to do like an entire class on classroom management, but just to give you a place to start from, especially making sure that when you're going into your first week that you feel really good about setting really high expectations for this. There are 5 areas that make you really solid classroom management plan. The first one is really high expectations, really high expectations. The second one is accountability, because high expectations don't exist unless you hold people to them. The third one is consistency, which is two things. It means that you are consistently applying high expectations almost every day. You're not going to be able to do it every day, but almost every day. But that you are also applying the same rules to every person, regardless of all the things, regardless. And another one is support. Support means that you are providing students with absolutely everything that they need in order to meet those really high expectations. Everything and more. And support is emotional support. Support is scaffolding for behaviors or examples of ways that they can move in a different direction. Support is also things like, I'm not going to do things like push this down the line of administration, like we're going to work this out, you and me kind of thing, like that type of support. And that also has to do with the 5, like the most important one, which is relationships. I know you're really worried about classroom management. You're asking this because you're worried about classroom management, but you don't have to worry that much about managing a classroom if you have really strong relationships with your students. And here's the good news that I have for you. When your classroom is very focused in on proficiency, it means that you're using a lot of methods where the students give you a lot of feedback based on themselves, based on their own lives, their own experiences, and things that really matter to them, or shared experiences around school. You're really getting to the heart of communication, and you're building relationships every day because you're talking to students and you're giving them concrete ways in order to talk to each other and with you, or understand what you're saying as you build relationships. So the whole idea of like trying to make sure that you've got lots of scaffolds for good behavior becomes far less of an issue because you have really strong relationships with your students. So I would worry less about what classroom management looks like and way more about these two things. Do your students know, but to the bottom of their hearts, that you like them and that you like them a lot, that you know things about their life, that you know things about things that are important to them? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be their family or things like that. It can be anything that's really important to them. And that is how you will build a really solid classroom management strategy. I will tell you that when I focused less on like, how am I going to manage certain behaviors, to like paying really crazy attention to the 15% of students that were working with the different behavior expectations that I had and trying to like see where they could cross the line. When I did more work with building relationships with them, it changed everything. So I would really hone in on relationships. And just by talking to them more and using more target language, you will build those relationships. Here's one more example that I want you to keep in mind, just to keep this really, really concrete. I know I'm really tempted to give you a classroom example of what good classroom management looks like, but I actually want to put you in your students' shoes for how they feel right now, walking into a new classroom, maybe for the first week of school. I have seen, so this is something that we as adults sometimes forget, is that like we have rules and expectations imposed on us a lot too. And we sometimes forget what it means to have like really high expectations, and all of those 5 things: the high expectations, the accountability, consistency, support, and relationships, because those are the 5 strong elements. We sometimes forget that adults need that too. So let me show you an example here. Everybody's mask policy has changed a lot over the course of the whole COVID pandemic, right? And we've seen different businesses, establishments, whatever you want to call it, respond very differently to this. And like, we're not even going to get into like what that really looks like and what the well, the outcomes for all that are, but I want to use it as an example because it's something that we as adults are all living in right now. It's an expectation that changes depending on what room or location that you go into. What is the mask policy where you go? Is it like whether it's a store or a restaurant, or maybe you're crossing a state line or you're going into a school? You know what I mean, right? Like we're just using it as an example of like, this is a rule that adults have to follow. So imagine this is what your students feel like when they have a rule in your classroom. Maybe it's something like cell phones. I was a high school teacher, so cell phones was like everything for the rules. So I have 3 examples for you. And I'm in South Carolina. So the mask policy right now is, at first it was required in all establishments. For a few weeks there, it was kind of like loosey-goosey, and then it was required in all public places, and now it's optional if you are fully vaccinated. So what we got going on here is 3 examples for you of different places, and I want you to put in the comments, which place do you think had all 5 of the good classroom management elements? And those are, again, you don't have to write them, just say like they had all 5. High expectations, accountability, consistency, support, and relationships. Here they are. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is a coffee shop that I went into like last year. So this is kind of early on. This was very active management of a mask policy. There was a sign on the door coming in, and there was also like a special line that you had to go through going in one way, and then you had to exit out another door in order to enter the coffee shop. You also had to have a mask in place in order to enter the coffee shop, right? Now, this was at a time where like some people were following, some people were complying, and some people weren't. So the people at the coffee shop, as people who were not following the expectation, you know, you go inside, you put your mask on, and then you see other people coming in who are not putting in their mask on. The people who are working at the coffee shop would shout at them, please put your mask on before coming inside and make sure that you follow the lines that are clearly marked out for you. Like real clear, right? And about half of the people coming in, I noticed, who had a mask, half of them stayed and put on their mask, and the other half just left and were like, I'm not going to come into this coffee shop. Just like, you know, boo on them. They were just being jerks. Think about this management strategy. So they definitely have like, they have clear signs. They know exactly what's going on, and they're like really diligent about like making sure that everybody's following the policy. And of course, like some people weren't complying with it. Here's another example for you. At a grocery store, same kind of deal. Long line outside, everybody being spaced out to where they can go inside the building in small groups. And there was also like, you wait your turn to go to the grocery store over here to maintain social distancing, and an employee lets you inside the grocery store. You must have your mask on in order to enter. We have masks for you if you need it. Ho, ho, ho. Another added element. So very strict policies in place, not unreasonable by any means, but definitely strict, because it's a grocery store and it was crowded. This was very early on in COVID times. And I remember very clearly, there was like a long line of people waiting to get their groceries, you know, like they got their bags, they're ready to go. They got their masks on, they're ready to go. Somebody is in line, clearly not ready to go. And we're all wondering like, what's going to happen? Like, we're not saying anything, but we're all wondering what's going to happen. They come to the front of the line. They don't have a mask on. And the employee says, you must wear a mask to enter the building. And the person says, I'm not going to wear a mask. And the employee says, well, okay, and lets them in. It's not the employee's fault. Like they were dealing with a lot of things, right, at that time. But you know what happened? Everybody in the line's turning to each other. Like they're not saying anything, but you could tell like the body language is just immediately really nervous. Everybody's really nervous. People are not upset about the fact that the rules are strict. They're upset about the fact that like, why are we all following this rule? And then that, like what's missing with that management policy? I bet you can all guess what it is. Then you have the last example, which was a shop, a soap marketplace. And I love soap. I'm like way into soap. It's real despicable how much I love soap. I love it. I like handmade soap. So going into a handmade soap shop, small place, really small place, like not a grocery store, really small place, but has a very strict COVID policy, probably because they're a soap shop. And this was like a few weeks ago. And outside, there's a sign that says, welcome back, because things had like recently just started to really open up in our area. Welcome back. Can't wait to see you. Can't wait for you to check out all our sweet new soaps. We've been waiting for you to try them in person. Masks are required because at this point, like masks were optional. Masks are required upon entry. If you don't have one, we'll provide one. And so you enter the store, and as you enter the store, you're greeted by two employees. One of them has a hand sanitizer, like right there to be like, welcome back. Let me tell you about your new products. Please hold out your hands. Like not even giving us a chance to be like, oh, okay, I guess what? All right, sweet. I'm ready to go. And the second employee says, do you need a mask? We have all these different colors that you can choose from. We're so glad that you're here. Thanks for visiting us. And I thought to myself, this is way different from anything that I've ever experienced walking into a store. Like I didn't feel at all like I was pressured. I still felt welcome, but I also still felt like this is the real deal. Like they're not going to let me in unless I have a mask, which of course, like I was already wearing. But notice the difference between the three approaches. All of them were looking for the same results. They're all looking for people to wear their masks and clean their hands before entering their establishment and follow like a clear pattern of traffic. But I could tell you that the one that didn't have people leaving the establishment and the one that had the most positive response from people, you could probably guess which one it was. Which one do you think it was in the comments? I'll tell you in a minute. Which one do you think it was? I like to put you in these shoes so that you think about like, yeah, I know it's like, it's hard to talk about these things since it is a difficult time that we are in. But if you separate yourself from that for just a second and remember that like masks are a rule and procedure that we as adults have to follow, and that of course are happening in your students' lives too, as well. Yeah, for sure. The soap shop. So I want you to be the soap shop. Yeah. Delana, you got it. Delana, your name is important. Let me know that I'm pronouncing it correctly. And Gloria, yeah, the soap store. They were positive, they were friendly, but they also like, they're not going to take no ish. Like they're making sure that you're wearing your mask and that you are nice and clean because they're a soap store. So you can be both. You can absolutely be both. And you can do the same thing with enforcing target language policies and with whatever other policies that you want to do. But the thing that the soap store did that I think the other places are missing is they had the consistency, like across the board. The grocery store was missing that. And the soap store also had that element of relationships that is going to make a huge difference between whether your classroom management plan is successful or not. So keep that in mind as you're going into your room. And just as a note about masks, in my district, masks are again required this year. I'm not in the classroom. You guys are the real heroes. I support you from behind the scenes. But I dropped my son off at kindergarten today for his first day. And the school has mandated masks for the first 3 months of school. And I'm sitting here just hoping that teachers have a good mask policy in place, because I know it's going to be so hard for them to go back to another year of making sure that students are wearing their masks. So I'm hoping that this example, like, even though it is hard to talk about, is something that we can remember is like what works and what doesn't when it comes to enforcing something that can be really tricky. So take some tips from the soap store. Have extras on hand. I know you might not have a buddy in your classroom to help you, but have some extras on hand and make sure you're doing it with love, and it will go over so much smoother. Same thing happens with target language and with proficiency. All right, you guys ready for the next question? Classroom management's a big one, so I wanted to spend some time on it. The next question that I had is, what's hard with starting with CI is scheduling. What order do I do things? Ooh, what a good question. And this teacher says, I know the last thing should be a story using all the input they received, but what happens before that? Teacher who asked this question, because I didn't get your names in the survey, but I would love to know where you got this idea. If you do a story every day, you're going to burn out so fast, so fast. And I would also say that the order that you do things doesn't really matter that much. What matters is the content of your classroom and how rich it is in language. So you can do a lot of different things. I would recommend kind of the stacking order that was presented by a couple different teachers in Practical and Comprehensible, where they would start, like, absolutely start with a warm up that is completely in the target language and is very accessible to them, and something that you do every dang day. Calendar talk is a great example. Claudia Elliott did an amazing presentation about calendar talk. I thought that was really good and a great way to start off your day. And then you can go into something more meatier. I also like to do, like, like the classroom buzz of like the 5 minutes of things you got to talk about, of things going on around the school and like quick reminders, blah, blah, blah. And I was used to block schedules. So we had to do those reminders a lot and we had time to do that. And then I would go into some sort of 15-minute language activation activity, depending on what stage you're in. If you're in the first week of school, you are in input mode. So you can do a lot of different things. I used to do songs. I did a song for the whole first week and we tore that song apart. We talked about the social justice elements of the song, and then we used that song in order to learn all of the high frequency verbs that students would need in order to introduce themselves and understand other people introducing themselves and talking about basic aspects of themselves. And then I ended with a speaking quiz at the end of the week. So that's a suggestion that you can use, but I would really look deep into this teacher. I really hope that you have the all access pass so that you can watch what a whole week can look like in your classroom and see some really good examples of that. My planner's backwards. I'm looking at that right now. Those peaches are upside down. Those peaches are upside down. They're still wonderful though. What order do you do things? If you are looking for a specific order, I would say that you're following some of the normal orders of good lesson planning, but you're doing it in a way that promotes language acquisition. So what does that mean? Warm up. We do teacher demonstration, and what, like, the teacher demonstration part is really just the teachers doing a lot of talking and the students are showing you that they understand what's going on, and you've got so many different activities that you could do that with. And then you wrap up your class with a chance for students to absorb, depending on what stage they're in, or practice the language that they just acquired and let it sink in a little bit further. You can certainly end with a story if you want to, but if you try and do that every day, you're so going to burn out. Ask me how I know. You're so going to burn out trying to do a story every day, because I know it is really language rich, but it also kind of overwhelms students, in my opinion, if you do a story every single day. I hope that really helps you with figuring out some orders for what to do in your classroom. Let me know. Send me an email if you would like more details about that. Okay, I got another question for you. Are you ready? Ooh, Amina, what song did you use? I got you covered. I have a whole free unit for you on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's for French. Do you teach French, Amina? Let me know. Laisse-moi le savoir. If you teach French, it's free. It's 2 weeks. Well, no, it's like 6 days. So it's 1 week of the song Madame, Monsieur, Merci is the song title. You can look it up on YouTube right now. It's mercy, like the English word, and it's amazing. It's amazing, and you can get the whole unit for free. It's part of the Teach for Justice library. It's really good. You'll love it. And then with my Spanish students, I used, oh my gosh, why can't I think of the one that everybody uses? So yo, bum, 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 bum. The really awesome one by Bomba Estéreo. Oh yeah, that's it. Bomba Estéreo. I use that one, which is a great song. Mixed classes of grade. Okay, so sorry, I'm already starting to read the question here. We have another question here. I have mixed classes of grade 4 beginner and grade 5. That's what's hard about my week 1. Yeah, that's hard. Yeah, that's really hard. I will steal some words of wisdom from Allison Veenhold, who was Mies Classes Locas, and she was a presenter at Practical and Comprehensible, the conference oh my gosh, almost a month ago now. Feels like years. Feels like years ago. Um, she spoke in one of the Q&As about her experience. I cannot speak to your experience teaching elementary, but I would say that if you have total beginners and then your students have what you say has 1 year of French, she spoke at length about like way in the middle, like in the trenches of COVID, having a Spanish 3 and a Spanish 4 class in the same room and how difficult it was. And at first, she was trying to do the whole thing where she would spend 20 minutes teaching to one side of the room and 20 minutes teaching to the other side of the room. And it was a recipe for burnout. And it was also really, really difficult to keep up with both of them. So, what she ended up doing to keep herself sane is she actually just started using the same lesson plans and activities, but changing them so that she could teach the same way to both groups of students, but then have them practice the activity and show their understanding in a deeper, more profound way for the grade 5 students. That's what I would do for you. Her words, not mine. She's a genius. This is also something I had a colleague who had the same thing with a French 4 and 5 class, and that's how she would do it. She would teach the same lesson and then have students do different things with it, unless she had a very skewed number. So it might depend on the number of students you have in your class. If you have 5 grade 5ers and then 20 grade 4s, depending on how that works. Because I know with French, usually the scheduling is just like, well, we have some of these guys over here. We're just going to plop them in this class. That happens a lot with French because it is a smaller class. I'm sure it happens with German and Chinese if you are also watching, like the smaller languages. We know that life. So if this is the case for you, then what you can also do is, I've seen it done really well where one group is working on a long-term group assignment that's a little bit more student-led, because if they're electing to take that less adopted language, they're probably self-directed learners, and you might be able to work with a more self-directed project, something like PBL. Check that out and see what you think with that. Let me know if that helps. Okay, this next one is absolutely my favorite because I feel it in my feels so hard. And I think that lots of teachers have felt this boy before too. You ready? Oh, I see some comments. Hold on. Keep you in suspense. Do you introduce expectations on the first day, and do you do it in the target language or in English? No, I don't, Dara. I actually don't. Here's what I do. I used to show them. What do I mean by that? In my first 2 years of teaching, I spent a lot of time like talking the talk about like, these are the rules. These are your expectations. This is what you're going to do every day. This is how you're going to be held accountable. And I decided, I read a really good blog post. I wish I could remember who it was by, but it was by a fabulous second grade teacher, not a world language teacher, who showed me the possibility of, instead of talking so much about what your class is going to be like, what if you showed them what class was like from the jump? So you have them enter the room, work already ready to go on their desks, perfect seating chart, which you can always, shift around later or get rid of if they don't need it, but you always start with one. I used to, at least. You do you. And you dole out expectations as things pop up and as they go around, because you know that the first week of class is always when they're going to be the quietest and the most receptive. And they're looking to see also what the tone of your classroom is like. It sinks in way better when you show them. Things like what I used to do, talking about like cell phones as well, is I would say things like, hey, can you put that in your pocket? Okay, cool. And I would just like whisper to students if they had their phones out. I wouldn't put like a big shebang about like phones weren't allowed in the room. I would just like tap on the desk and say like, hey, can you put that in your pocket? And would just move around the room. And I would never say on the first day that phones aren't allowed. Never. There was only one time when I needed to. And it was really only because of like one student who was like a 3%er kind of deal. And the message goes through really fast, really quickly that like this is not a place where you do that kind of deal. And then I relaxed the phone policy later on in the year because we started using Duolingo, and then we talked about the phone policy a week later. And yes, I did it in English because I used phones a lot in my classroom. But what I did is that I made it really clear from the beginning that like we only use phones for instructional purposes and when I allow you to take it out kind of deal. And that worked really well for me. Whew, it was such a struggle. It was such a struggle managing the phones. And that was the thing that worked the best for me instead of making like a huge harumph about it. Hope that helps you. Kayla, what's up? I'm teaching proficiency in all is well in your first week of CI. So glad to hear that. I'm planning for next week. I have to prepare them for using targeted vocabulary for benchmarks. What would you recommend that I incorporate? I struggle finding interpretive things unless I create it myself. YouTube. Find YouTube videos for things that your students actually like. I have a class you would really like, Kayla. It's pretty short too. That's all about like how to find authentic text quickly at your students' levels. I only ever taught levels 1 and 2. So this one's going to apply to you too. But you know how students are all about hair tutorials, makeup tutorials, watching other people play video games, watching other people eat stuff, where they buy their sneakers, that kind of things. Guess what other students around the world speaking the same language are doing? The same thing. Find influencers in your students' age groups talking about the things that they like in whatever unit you're doing. So for example, if you're trying to do targeted vocabulary for a unit on, I don't know, if you're in the beginning of the year, maybe it's about school. There are so many videos about get ready with me, open up the backpack with me, and don't even worry about the fact that it might be like maybe too fast or they might not understand everything in there. Because you can put a lot of scaffolds in there. You can put subtitles, you can do all kinds of things. So watch that class. I will dump it in the comments at the end to help you with that. Oh, de rien, Dara, you're totally welcome. I'll put that link in the comments at the end to help you with that. I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you need more support with that, but that's a really good question. Finding interpretive things is indeed really hard. But my favorite place, everybody's got their favorite place to go. My favorite place has always been YouTube, and I've had the most success finding influencers, or I don't know if I would call it influencers, but YouTubers who are the same age as my kids, talking about things that my kids care about. That's what I've had the most success with. Not educational videos. Do not show them educational videos. They don't care. You're the only one who cares. Sorry, that was very opinionated, but that's me. That's me. All right, good. I'm glad that helped. What's the last question? Oh, guys, in the suspense zone. Y'all, are you ready for this one? Here's the suspense. Not being 100% confident in your own language abilities. How can I up my target language game? We all feel this. We all feel this if you are a non-native speaker. If you are a non-native speaker, you've probably felt this at one point or another, or maybe like every dang day, every dang second, like I do, that your target language is not up to scratch, that you do not have enough accuracy to be teaching a level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, like insert whatever class. Guess what? You're not alone. Everybody feels that way. Everybody feels that way. And you can find, if you even search this term of like how to improve my target language as a language teacher, you will find so many articles, videos, creepy posts on Facebook of people who feel the same way that you do. It's a really common problem. And guess what? Great teachers feel this way. and speak a lot in their classroom. You can learn from mistakes. And also, something I find really comforting in level 1 and level 2 is that you're probably saying the same stuff over and over and over again. Don't feel the pressure that you have to be a perfect speaker in order for your students to learn something, because what your students need is repetition of outrageously basic, high frequency, highly targeted phrases in order to be successful. That's what they need. That's what they need. And you can provide that no matter what level you're at. Well, you got to be at a certain level, but you're already there. You made it to this point. You're there. You're absolutely there. So a way that you can alleviate some of that pain is to recognize and to admit to your students, I make mistakes in the target language all the time, but look at all these things I can do. And I want you to remember something really important that I learned from somebody that I love to learn from. Her name is Marie Forleo. Look up her YouTube channel. If you have time, she has really great YouTube channel about all things life. And she taught me that what you focus on expands. What you focus on expands in life. So if you are focusing on the fact that you're not good enough to teach your students, that's all you're going to think about. But if you maybe just put a pin in it and move on from it and say, like, you know what? It's cool. I know I'm not a perfect speaker. Maybe I went through my whole teaching career at intermediate high for both languages, French and Spanish, because it's a really common problem when you teach both. I'm an intermediate high speaker. I'm not at advanced low. And I was a dang good teacher. Not because my language skills were amazing, but because I had great relationships with my students and I provided them a really fun target language focused environment. And you can too. What you focus on expands. I chose to not focus on that thought, and you don't have to focus on that either. I wouldn't even worry about trying to up your game. That's, of course, something that you can do in your free time, but who has that right now? You got to focus on back to school right now. You are enough the way that you are. You're enough the way that you are. Last question. Speaking of language, getting students to stay in the target language and not just English. This is the hardest thing that any of us can do ever. I would say that the number one thing is to start slow, speak a lot, provide them with a lot of input, have posters everywhere of only the most important things that they need to know, not those crappy classroom phrases that they're never going to use. Oh, I have my homework and things like that. The things they're actually going to use, where is this? I have, I need, I want, I do, those phrases. And classroom phrases like, can I go to the bathroom? And those kinds of things where they actually are moving around the building. Getting students to stay in the target language, they will do so if they feel supported and if they feel like they can do it. I had students use a lot of target language, even though they used kind of the same words over and over again. They would stay in the target language because they felt really comfortable doing it. And your students can do that too. I would say the number one thing is make sure that they are really, 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 really crazy supported. And it comes back to actually management. This is a management thing. You have high expectations for them. This is a perfect way to round out class. You have accountability for them. You have maybe weekly or monthly checks about how much target language they're using, and you encourage them to do so in a positive way. Consistency. You're consistently using the target language. You have to be the model for it. This was the hardest part for me. Support. You're giving them a ton of support. If your students are in an activity and they break down with using target language, it's because they don't have enough support. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they don't have enough support to complete the task. And the last one is relationships. Do you have a good rapport with your students where they trust you, they trust the environment, and they believe that they're going to be supported in a target language environment? Boom. All that being said, that's way easier said than done. This was a daily struggle for me too when I was still in the classroom. So we're all in it with you. I would really suggest that if you attended the conference too, like don't forget about the stuff that you have. If you bought one of the lifetime access passes, which you can still get if you're interested in this, there's a lot of presentations on getting students to stay in the target language. Diane and Kevin both did amazing ones on this, and oof, they're total wizards. They're total wizards on this idea. So I really hope that this helps to keep you focused on sticking with the good stuff, sticking with proficiency and strong, high expectations for the beginning of your year. But y'all, it was such a pleasure to hang out with you today. So before we wrap up today, does anybody, if you have any more questions, please put them in the chat. I would love to help you with them. And I am going to make sure, while I give you some time to think of some questions, if not, it's cool, I'll let you go. But I'm going to remind myself of two things that I need to do is I need to put in there that French unit. If you're interested in using that for your back to school, it's free for you to use, might as well. And the other thing I needed to add in there is that, oh, if you would like to watch the class that is all about authentic texts and how to quickly find authentic text so that you're not like swirling down the rabbit hole of trying to find things. I keep moving this table. Trying to find things, I've got a class for you. So I'm gonna make sure that I write that down. The authentic text, linky link. And what was the other thing? Oh yeah, merci. So I'll put that in the comments right after this class here. And the last thing that I want to remind you of is have an amazing, joyful, perspective-filled back to school season, wherever you're at. If you're already in the classroom, I hope you're having a really positive experience, and I'm here to support you. And even if you're not, and it's hard, it's okay. It's okay to feel like it's really hard. And if you're still waiting for your classroom experience to start, maybe if you're starting in September, you still got some classes coming your way. Coming at you next week with another class, same time, same place, Wednesday at 4:00. So if y'all are all set and you don't have any questions for me, I'm out. Thanks, y'all. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being a part of my community and for coming to watch this class. It's been a dream. Oh, wow.